Hello, members. Welcome to another edition of MTI Heat Treat Live here, right from Jacksonville, Florida, the MTI home offices. We're excited to have you online today. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We got three great members here ready to share stuff on technical specifications. But a couple of things I want to let everybody know is down to your right, actually, if you hover on the bottom of this screen, you'll see a menu pop up that has chat box. Any questions you can have, you can post down here in the right-hand corner in the little type message here, and I will be monitoring that to share comments with the panelists, your questions, and if you have an answer to something, feel free to type it in. So we're glad everybody's listening from around the country. A couple items I want to make note of MTI. We got a lot going on here at Metal Treating Institute. As you know, right now we're in the midst of the MTI Foundation Scholarship. If you know anybody out there that can use $1,500, $5,000, or $15,000, MTI is giving away $50,000 and $500 worth of scholarships this year, and the application process goes through May 31st, and you can go to the MTIeducationalfoundation.com. That's MTIeducationalfoundation.com, and there's a place there where you can hover, and on the scholarship application process, any student of any member firm or anybody in college you know that you might want to recruit and they need the money, send them that link and let's get them in, because we've got 13 different scholarships available, so you want to tie into that. Next thing is our 2020 Yes Management Training Program. A lot of you are saying 2020, Tom, it's only April. Well, I can tell you, we've already got 4 applications in for the 2020 program. This last year has 33 students in it that we're currently in 2019, and it sold out faster than ever. I expect by September, all the slots will be gone. So if you have a key manager, even if you're the president of a company that's never been in any formal management training, we have presidents of companies that are coming through this program in the past. So if you want to put a next person to go to the next level, a new manager or a current manager, that you want to give them this extreme challenge to go through the Yes Management Training Program, they'll come out a different human being, get them in. Just go to heattreat.net, our website, heattreat.net, and click on training, and you'll see there the link to the Yes Management Training Program. And then we have our spring meeting coming up in 2 weeks in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. If you're going to be there, you're going to have a grand time. We got lots of social activities, but some incredible speakers on how to create a rock and roll workplace culture, a place where you really want to come to work. And then Kenneth Grombach is going to be talking and opening up about the economic boom happening in the next 20 years. Things are going to be bright and happy in the world of manufacturing for the next 20 years. And he's going to show the data behind that. So it's going to be great stuff. And then we've got something brand new that just came out. They just had their kickoff call yesterday. MTI's new cybersecurity committee. That cybersecurity committee is made up of 6 to 7 heat treaters and suppliers just like you. And they're meeting on a quarterly basis. And they're going to be doing webcasts just like this one each 3 to 4 months to keep you abreast of everything to do with cybersecurity. It is a serious issue. We've had members talk about having wire instructions in the middle of an email grabbed and hacked and then sent back, and they sent money wrong places. We've had a couple members that have had the ransomware thing where they've had to pay money to get their data back. So this is very real, even in the world of heat treat. So if you don't have an information security policy and you're looking for best practices, stay tuned in for this committee, because it's going to be doing some heavy lifting to give you what you need to know about cybersecurity. So, but cybersecurity is next month at Heat Treat Live. This month is about technical specifications. And so right now I'd like to introduce our 3 panelists, and y'all can just share your name, your company, and who you're with to anybody that doesn't know who you are. So let's start with you, Ed.
Ed Engelhard, Vice President, Corporate Quality, Solar Atmospheres.
Robert?
Hi, Robert Peters. I'm a consultant now in the world of heat treating, additive manufacturing, 3D printing, as well as NADCAP.
And Bob?
And I'm Bob Ferry. I'm Vice President of Engineering and Quality at FPM Heat Treating in Chicago.
So I'd just like real quick to everybody out there listening in to say kudos to these 3 gentlemen and the many others on the Technical Standards Committee. Mary Springer, one of our past presidents, gave Bob Ferry, who was at our Midwest chapter meeting, a lot of kudos for the work that they're doing in the world of technical specifications. They put a lot of effort, a lot of work. About 22 different people on this committee are meeting every single 3 months to talk about the issues and everything we're going to move through today. So the work of this committee is not being done by some staff member or people that are paid. I'm just facilitating things that they need, but it's a team of 22 heat treaters that are putting their own time and money in to help protect you, give you a voice, and go into these committee meetings and make sure you're heard. So hats off to them. So Bob, the world of automotive, my friend, the things that keep America moving, right? The big automotive world. And there's this little thing called CQI 9 that you have to live by. What is the the complications and conversation behind CQI 9 these days?
Okay, so the CQI 9, as you know, it's still going under that revision 4, but there is a very strong push to try to get this thing done, wrapped up from our committee by the end of this year. So, you know, we're trying to make sure that we take care of all the agenda issues, and we've been through all the process tables, I think, except for one so far. And now it's moving towards taking care of the parking lot items that we wanted to go back to and take another look at, as well as just verbiage cleanup. So I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but there's a lot to go back through the document and get all of that right. And I will say that even though we're going to go through all of this effort at trying to make everything marry together and adding more definitions to the glossary and trying to make the spec more usable, user-friendly, you know, we're probably going to miss the mark on a couple of things. So who knows what's going to happen in the future. We'll probably have addendums to it to fix anything that we might have missed. To give you some of the highlights, obviously, in low pressure carburizing, they wanted to spell out requirements for capturing, quench delay times for liquid and gas quenching. So that is being put into that process table for the various types of low pressure carburizing equipment. They've also added leak rate check requirements for these furnaces, and it's going to be different based on the type of furnace that you're dealing with, whether it's a single chamber or one of the multi-chamber furnaces. Then we walked into ion nitriding. We figured we're going to carry the leak rate check requirements back to the process table H for ion nitriding as well, and which isn't unusual. It's something that heat treaters do anyway, so they're just going to have it in the process table at this time. Then we moved on to process table I. That was for dry contact press hardening. It's a kind of a specialized area where the parts are literally hardened in the dies, right? As you're pressing them, they quench in the die and get their mechanical properties so they don't have to be heat treated later. That is also something that is going to, a new process table is being created for that. And we just went through all of that through this last meeting. So moving on, we're going to hit the parking lot items and continue on pushing this thing, because we've been working on this a while and we're trying to get this thing out the door by the end of the year. So that's kind of where we stand.
So when you look at that committee, when you look at how technology shifts are happening throughout the automotive world, I know it's changing dynamically. Do you feel like the specification process, we'll talk about that with AMEC and Nadcap, do you feel like the specification process is keeping up with a lot of the technology shifts that are happening amongst the automotive industry?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, it's like with anything, they're really encouraging the technology shifts, because basically technology shifts go into better process control. Typically, process controls for your furnace and equipment, and in any manufacturing community, that's what they're all about. Is they want to see that you have very good controls of your process, and especially for high volume production parts, they want to know that you've got your arms around all of the process variables that are going to ensure that they get good product. Right. So yeah, I think, and they're trying to incorporate that into this new revision. I mean, we're even looking at infrared thermometry, which covers, the spectrum of IR sensors to, color monitoring equipment. That's coming. So we wanted to write something in to allow its use, although it's not being used throughout the industry today, but we see it coming. It's on the forefront right now. So we're trying to get that into spec so that we don't have to go back and rewrite the spec.
No one wants revision 5 soon, right?
Yeah, as the technology, it takes us 5 years to write a spec.
is there one thing when you look at that spec? Is there one thing when, let's say it gets done by December and it's out? Is there one thing that you think you could put on people's minds, either whether it's change or something you're going to need to buy or something you do not need when the spec's done? What is kind of a big thing that you feel like people need to pay attention to when it's done?
Well, I think that the biggest thing is going to be involved in looking at your equipment for process control updates, right? Because there's still people out there using paper charts,
right.
And quite honestly, they make room for it in CQI 9, But if you have paper charts, then you have stricter requirements on how you take care of that. But if you have more updated process controls with data collection systems that are have limits on their process variables, high and low alarms. There's so many more things you can do with process controls today that automotive really want. They're encouraging you and almost insisting that you walk down that path if you want to stay in the heat treat game.
Right. So Norm, one of our members, Norm, just asked, I guess he's asking, will infrared be covered in 2750 or where will that be covered?
It's broadly going to be called like infrared thermometry, which allows the use of an IR unit, because they use IR units now for mesh belts for measuring temperature. And even the IR units that they're using, some of them have the capability of sweeping and giving you a sweeping temperature. So there's many other options. So they're making room to be able to use that kind of technology as another process measuring tool, temperature measuring tool, to help control your process. And yes, they are going to write it in as a generic term, but that doesn't rule out like a color camera kind of thermometry. Now the question is, how do you calibrate that color camera? That's going to be another issue.
That's the question.
Yeah.
So as if pyrometry wasn't enough, now we're going to have thermometry, right? Awesome. So
they're trying to get the terminology right.
So anything else on CQI 9, Bob, that you think of?
At this time, no. I think we're just plodding along and trying to push through and make this thing happen at this time.
Awesome. That sounds good. Well, thanks for the update. So now let's switch over to ASTM. Ed, you have been going to those meetings. I know we've got E10, E18, E20, EIOU. I mean, we've got them all over the place. So what's the latest on ASTM updates, the things that members need to know about?
The last meeting I attended was last fall, and not a lot has changed since then. The various committees have kicked out their minutes from the prior meetings. Right now, it looks like E10 and E18 are fairly stable. The next project will be to go to E110, which is portable hardness testers that are incapable of being verified by direct means. So they're going to start plowing through that one in the next meetings, which are in May in Denver, by the way. So we'll wait and see what comes out of all that. As far as other ASTM endeavors, I did go to an additive manufacturing conference a couple of weeks ago down at Auburn University in Alabama, where there's a center of excellence in additive manufacturing. And it was a very interesting agglomeration of folks from quite literally around the world who presented a lot of technical data regarding the viability of additive manufacturing in the future. And ASTM's part was trying to figure out how to come up with standards that might apply to AM manufacturing and then the parts that AM produces. So that's all of the ASTM activity that I've been involved in to date.
So it's my understanding they're breaking that into 9 subcommittees that represent a host of industries. Did they talk about that at all?
They did. It's still very fluid, and we're going to have to watch. There will be of particular interest to heat treaters, of course, will be post-processing. That is, the heat treatments and other manufacturing processes that occur after the additive manufacturing portion has been completed and you have the near net shape part. Heat treating really received, I thought, very short shrift in this conference that I attended. It didn't sound like its impact was as well developed as some other aspects of additive manufacturing and manufacturability issues in particular received. Right. And then at the end of it, there was a lot of discussion about the potential for additively manufactured parts to perform in critical and safety critical applications. And the jury is way out on that yet.
So I'm interested to know, having gone to that conference, one, what your perspective was as a heat treater on the whole additive manufacturing process. Do you see it becoming a viable and huge part of the manufacturing?
It will find its place, no doubt. Okay. There's no question. And it's interesting because the attractiveness to people who have to make difficult shapes is much greater than it is to the people who have to justify properties at the end of the line.
Right, right.
And that seems to be the rub, and this is why ASTM was involved, is they want to start kind of compiling and standardizing good practices to help foster the adoption of AM in a wider variety of applications.
So would you say it would be a good thing, a good best practice for any member listening to this, any heat treater, to actually begin having a discussion with their customer on where they stand in the additive manufacturing process to make sure they're on the inside loop of being a part of that decision and process, as opposed to finding out later and it might impact their relationship?
Well, yeah, unfortunately, a lot of this is very highly proprietary still.
Right.
So people are reluctant to share in detail the practices that they've developed to avoid problems. Over time, that sort of knowledge will get let out and it'll become more diffuse and available. My suggestion is that if you are doing additively manufactured parts, that you stay in very close contact with your customer's engineering staff that are directly involved, so that everybody's on the same page as you go through the process together. At least that way you will garner a better understanding of at least what that customer needs. And by osmosis, you're going to learn about the process and how best to do it.
Right. Yeah, I think a key question just to ask the customer is to say, additive manufacturing is growing in a lot of different industries. How do you feel it's coming down through your supply chain? And do you see you having a distinct additive manufacturing strategy for making your parts or your product? Because I think them answering that question will allow you to understand, do I need to dig deeper? Because as I talked about last show 3 months ago, additive manufacturing has the ability to take 10 parts that were manufactured as individual pieces, then brought back after machining and heat treating, and you put them together. It allows you to print all 10 of those parts on one piece, and then it's got to be heat treated. So there's still heat treating need to be done on the part, but it's a lot less heat treating that needs to be done in volume. So I think it's crucial members get out there and talk to their customers about that process.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, anything else on ASTM?
That's all I have right now. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thanks for the update, Ed. So now let's shift to the people that write the law of the land for aerospace, AMEC committee, which me and Robert go to all the time. Robert, tell us what the down and dirty is. Let's start with 2759, the slashbacks. I know that's been going on for 7 years. They had it out there, they brought it back, and now it's in the committee process again. Where we stand on 2759, the slashes?
Well, the base spec, we reviewed a lot of the T comments because it went out for voting, all right, and had some discussions. And one of the big ones is on stock removal, all right, because some of the manufacturers are trying to hold the heat treater liable for the K-steps and stuff like that. And the biggest concern is, why is the heat treater being held responsible? That should be the manufacturing issues. So that was the heated discussion on the basic spec. All right. I would like to make a comment though about additive manufacturing before we move forward a little bit more, because I am part of that committee. All right. The additive manufacturing group has approached NADCAP about the heat treating specification. Okay. One of the things about making a part out of powdered metal, and right now specs are being written for titanium, stainless steel, and aluminum. Those are the three basic metals that are out there being dealt with. Once a part is generated, you've got less than 10 minutes to stress relieve it before it cracks. All right. Now, I'm saying all of that, you know, heat treating is still going to be done. Just the number of parts are going to be smaller, quantity-wise, for the heat treatment, right? And this has really taken off, as Bob and Ed know, that the industry is really, really growing. And we're kind of behind in getting a lot of specifications written for the industry. Yes, the committee's writing on how you do the powdered metal and da-da-da-da, but they haven't really gone to, okay, what's NADCAP going to say about an airplane part, okay? The specifications, you know, for the heat treating. Or if you've got certain finishes that got to be on the part that's going to go into an aerospace product, okay? So all that is still out there for discussion. So it's still, I don't want to say in the infant stage, but let's just say it's in the early stages, and there's a lot of different organizations that are going to have input into how, when, and where. So back to your comment about heat treaters. Okay, yes, talk to your customer. Stay in line with them until these specifications now become public and are called out on a drawing. You know, stay in contact with those engineering groups of those customers that you're dealing with. That way you'll be with the latest technology that they're dealing with in their manufacturing.
Right.
Okay. Sorry about all that, folks. Okay.
No, that's good.
Now back to the specs. Okay. We were looking at /3 and going over soak time. That's one of the biggest issues right now that we're having to deal with, is adding more time to the soaking requirements. It's been a heated discussion right now. Hopefully next week at our meeting in Phoenix, we'll be able to fine tune this one. /5, okay. Positive pressure, gas positive pressure. That was a big heated one for martensitic steels, all right. And a lot of discussion. Hopefully we're going to come to some conclusion next week on that one. /5, corrosion steel. You know, the gas pressure is a wide range because of the different types of equipment that are out there that people use. So a lot of feedback was given to us on it. And like I said, hopefully we'll get that one taken care of. /7, okay, snap tempering. All right, we all agreed that it should be done at 300 degrees because in the past, it was really not a set time and temperature for doing snap tempering. You know, when you've got an issue and you got to hold the parts, okay, well, you got to do something after they're quenched. You can't let them sit there. As long as they set without being snap tempered, the greater the odds of cracking. All right. So we came up with a time and temperature for that one. Then we've got the AMS H6875, which a lot of people are familiar with. It's now going to be AMEC 18AA. We are doing some updates to that specification because 6875 is pretty old. And we're trying to get more material information into the specification because, as we all know, it's an outdated specification and we need to get it up. So we're going to get it into the AMS group, but we're not going to leave it at 6875. All right. Pyrometry. Oh, a lot of heat treaters out there will understand this one. Reviewing the T comments on 2750. All right. We had discussions on the corrective actions of the offsets. All right. Limits on the amount of instruments that can be adjusted. Reports on documentation. Approval of test reports provided, okay, by the provider. All right. SAT clarification. Modifications and repairs. Readability. Okay. Whether it's going to be Fahrenheit or the C scale. All right. You know, we're having some discussions on that. Single use above 500 Fahrenheit. You know, we are addressing all of that. Again, hopefully next week we're going to be able to fine tune this and get that out for voting. All right. Then there was a little comment about AC 7004 from NADCAP. All right. Because that one's constantly being changed. So heat treaters have got to be very much aware. It has gone through 2 revisions in less than 12 months. All right. At the beginning of the year, it was Rev G was coming out. All right. Now I understand it's another edition coming out. So please pay attention to that one. All right. Because that is how your audits are to be done. What is the auditor going to look at going forward? Okay. 17, HIP. This is where AMEC can use a lot of help because we have some information about HIP and we have some heat treaters that do hipping, but not as many as the other standards of vacuum or endothermic and all that. So any information people want to feed us on HIP is great because one of the things that was talked about was checking of the thermocouples. Is it done daily? Yes or no? You know, the start of the cycle, when the vacuum pumps are on, is the heat on? You know, work zone, control zone, those type of issues. Thermocouple replacement. Okay, what's the standards for that? You know, what is practical? You know, not what somebody wants, but what is practical for that. All right. And again, the Additive Manufacturing Committee has approached AMEC about writing, or I shouldn't say writing, looking at the specifications that we have to make sure that will cover additive manufacturing. So that's an open discussion right now. It's not drawn in sand, yes or no, but we're moving on. Any questions?
So when you look at 2750, I know there was mega T comments on that thing, and I know can you connect the dot? And I think Robert or Bob, you may be able to chime in on this, but one of our members was talking about the amount of money it's going to increase them doing business because of how many times they've, I guess, got to change out the thermocouples. I think that's something discussed here so people understand the significance of it. If either one of y'all can discuss that.
Yeah, pretty much. We had one of our, like you said, one of our members was concerned that the requirements for how frequently you have to do temperature uniformity surveys now, if you just have to repair an element in a vacuum furnace, or with the temperature limitations that they put on the thermocouples that have changed from what it used to be. Now it's causing you to have to throw thermocouples away more frequently, which is going to result in an increased cost to everyone, at least the way it was drafted. So now there is, the spec 2750 is out for ballot again right now.
Yes.
So, I'm going to put my comments in, and I know the other guys are putting theirs in to make sure that we voice our concerns over these restrictions that they came up with. And I would love to know what the basis was for making the changes, but they don't really tell you what the basis is. They just made the changes. So
well, I know NADCAP has thrown a number of comments towards this one as well.
Okay.
Good or bad comments?
It's a loaded question, but I'll say what I will say that it's going to be difficult with basic heat treaters, as Bob was saying about the thermocouples and the changes. Right. There are some good things because the accuracy for an auditor and the data is going to be there, but then a heat treater is going to look at it and go, I got to replace it. What? This is going to cost me what? My customers aren't going to deal with this, So we've still got to try to come up with a right way to do 2750. All right. So good input. If anybody wants to feed some input to MTI, I'll take it to the meetings and see what I can do to, throw that out there. But there's a lot of changes coming, and there's a lot of players involved in this, whether it be additive manufacturing or NADCAP, or ASTM. There's a lot, and pyrometry is one of the biggest things right now, or the biggest topic dealing with in the AMEC committee. It took, there was a NADCAP gentleman there, and there was a gentleman from Boeing there. And the conversation, normally when we review a specification, maybe a couple hours. This one was the whole day, 8 hours. So, we need more input from people, so please feed it.
Well, I think that's why it's important for everybody on this webcast. Tell other people about the webcast and tell other people to get involved in each of these committees, because what's going on in these committees is not driven by the engineers in the heavens, I call it. It's driven by you. People like you are on these committees. The committees used to work for years, and all of a sudden you get a spec and go, what the heck happened? Now MTI is bringing what's going on in those committees out into the open, transparent every single quarter like this, and to keep members involved and informed so you can make decisions based upon great information. Or if you learn something, you can get more involved and be a part of the process, because you're getting a chance to influence the laws of the land when it comes to specs. And so that's why we love doing these things, and just encourage members, get involved. It's worth your money to send somebody to each of these meetings. I know Ed's very involved, and Bob goes to these meetings as well. Now, Bob, Norm asked, 2750 also impacts CQI 9. So will the thermocut, will they have the same issues in automotive?
Well, CQI 9 is not going to be as restrictive as 2750. And they've kind of chosen that path to where, and I think that was one of the reasons they decided to break off from 2750, is because it was just getting too restrictive. And they didn't see the benefit in some of the requirements.
Right.
In other words, like they want to be data driven and see, well, all right, is it going to make my product better if I do that, or am I just spending more money? I don't think, I think they're going to stay apart. Like we've rewritten the pyrometry section for CQI 9, and it's pretty much staying towards the level that it was at before, and it's not increasing like it's not being more restrictive like I think 2750 is.
So here's my thought. Is that because cars are on the ground and planes are at 37,000 feet? Which begs the question, when flying cars take off, will the CQI 9 become more restrictive? You don't know. You better be prepared. Better be thinking about it, though. It's coming. You watch. I swear it's coming.
No argument.
You're a big thinker.
Can you imagine CQI 9 and NADCAP and AMEC all converging on that topic?
Oh, my God.
Good luck with that one. So,
thanks, Tom.
Right. So ARP 19. So is that it on 2750, guys? In a nutshell. One last question. So, Robert, when you listen to all the comments, what would you say as a perspective that a timeline that you would say 2750? It looks like nothing will come out this year, even though some people wanted to push it out. It looks like it's going to minimum go into next year.
I would say that that's a fair statement. Once AMEC votes on a specification and we say, okay, it's good, it's passed, it goes to the other committees and they review it. And these committees sit above AMEC, and it's all part of the SAE thing. And it could take 4 months, it could take over a year. It depends on the different engineers that are involved and the input. We had a conversation earlier in the week with the gentleman about specifications and the timeline and what it takes. And there's just no positive thing we can say is this is the time it's going to get done and move on.
Right.
It doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
Right. Well, all the more important
from a lot of engineers and companies, because there's a lot of, sorry, Tom, there's a lot of people that vote on these specifications that do not attend the meetings with their members. Okay. And I have my comments about that one, but I think if you're going to be a voting member, you need to attend the meetings.
Right.
Because reading a specification and change it somebody wants to do, but you're never there to hear the discussions. So how do you know you're reading everything correctly?
So you're losing the context.
Yeah.
So, well, I think that's all the more important why to tune in to this show every quarter when we do these technical standards things, so you can be on the front end of all that data and all that information. So a great job on the 2750. I'll give a quick report on ARP 1962. Last time we talked about, we had submitted the finals to SAE, to AMEC, and it's gone through its various committees, and it's got one more committee to go to. They had some people, as you said, that weren't involved in the process, but it had to go to their committee, submit comments back. We have submitted those answers to those T comments back, and there's only one. All the other ones were information only. And so our expectation is that at the meeting in April here in Phoenix, we should see it pass that through, and hopefully somewhere between now and the November meeting, we'll see ARP 1962 in its new form approved by SAE. So that there's some good positive signs there.
Yeah, I'm taking a quick look at it right now, and a lot of it's just basic wording and setting the tables up to the SAE standard.
Right.
And I agree, Tom. I don't see there's going to be a hang-up. I think we're going to move forward with this one next week.
Yeah, and what I love about that spec is we've simplified it, we've given some clarity to it, and some good pathways for people to set up training. Obviously, we'd love to see people do MTI training. It's in the spec or in the ARP and got some good stuff. So ARP 1962 is changing, simplified, and it's coming to you hopefully by the end of the year. The last thing I wanted to kind of tune in on this particular section was we had been promoting the potential for a May date for an MTI quality seminar, which would really give a day and a half when all this stuff becomes the law of the land, not necessarily CQI 9, but 2759 and the slash specs and ARP 1962. And so we've put those dates on hold until we find out the slash specs have all been approved and they're all public and there's no looking back. The changes are done. We're going to schedule a day and a half quality seminar in Dallas, Texas. We've already got the location picked out. And we're building the speakers and the agenda, and it'll happen within 90 days after we get the final word that the specs are all approved and there's no going back. So keep that on your mind. Keep your quality manager tuned in. You'll get those dates the moment that those things are all approved in public. So appreciate y'all's patience on that. But we have to wait for SAE to do the finalization so we can know then how to move. So appreciate that. So now let's move into the big thing we want to talk about at the end of the day is NADCAP, the people who enforce the laws of the land of AMEC when the specs are approved. Ed, I know you were there with me, and we hosted a special, for the first time ever, MTI hosted a special 2-hour meeting of MTI members only on the first day of NADCAP before the public meetings opened up between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. And that meeting had about 22 members there. It was a very lively discussion, to say the least. We appreciate you leading that. So I just throw it in and we actually, when we got done with it, we asked the members, would you like to do this every meeting? And the answer was with a resounding yes. So if you send your people to NADCAP in Pittsburgh or any of the other special places in the U.S., they have it in February, just know that MTI for 2 hours on that Monday is going to host that meeting in the early afternoon. So you want to make sure that they're early enough. We'll send you invites and the details of that. So Ed, kind of share what was talked about in that meeting, which kind of bleeds into what the whole NADCAP meeting was about.
So this meeting occurred before the first open meeting in the NADCAP program for heat treat suppliers, which is a supplier sub-team. And it had really had suppliers fired up when they went to that meeting, at NADCAP meeting after the MTI session. So the expectation was that we just wanted people to discuss issues that they've had with audits and audit issues, particularly auditor consistency, dealing with findings that had not been previously uncovered in prior audits, how to make a case to an adversarial auditor, and maybe just other topics that they brought to the table. We got a lot of really good input and feedback. Like Tom said, it was a lively discussion. People do have issues. They want to talk about them. They're looking for solutions. Every one of them that was there wants to do a good job. They want to meet the requirements. But sometimes they find there are roadblocks getting them between them and getting to that position. So at the end of it, we made a list of notes, among them revisiting the post-audit supplier survey, perhaps come up with another way to survey how the audit went and how the auditor did. There were questions regarding inconsistencies among staff engineers relative to those suppliers that have been in the program for a while, who've kind of observed some differences in the way staff engineers handle certain things. There were concerns about certain systems that were in place to be used that don't seem to be followed at PRI or NADCAP. Auditor competency was another area of concern, and auditor training that goes hand in hand with that. It was remarked that knowing who your prime champion is, and this is something that's published in the agenda or attendees guide that you pick up when you go to the meeting. It's really good to know who among the primes for which you're approved attend these meetings and will help you with certain NADCAP issues. There were concerns expressed about handling of recommended practices from the specs that we get audited to, if they become a question, then they're not recommended anymore. They're a requirement. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of consistency about how that's determined when checklists are being made up. And suppliers were asking if there was any chance if they could sit in or somehow participate in the auditor training. So a lot of really interesting issues and questions came up. I'm not sure that we're going to answer everybody satisfactorily in every case, but I think much of it is really good food for thought and well deserves the attention of MTI to bring to the table directly to NADCAP and see if there's some way that we can work together to promote the system and help in its continual improvement.
Well, I think one of the issues that to go back on is the post-audit survey, because when you think about that, and everybody kind of agreed when we talked about it, that it's really a flawed system. Because imagine if you had to grade the effectiveness of your college professor before you got your final project graded, and the potentiality that he would get to have a conversation that would talk about that. Does it impact your, so I think that's the same thing with the post-audit survey. And my understanding is you have to complete that prior to being able to deal with your final findings, which
Right,
is flawed because our surveys last year that we did with members, 67% of members that get audited said they directly don't tell the truth about the audit process on their post-audit surveys because of the fear of the ramifications if the auditor got leaked or happened to connect the dots of what was said in that post-audit survey. So when they're standing up with their surveys going, we got a 9 out of 10, guys, we're doing a great job in that supplier support committee, it's not actually telling the truth because no one's telling them the truth. So I think it's great that this committee is looking to see how they can influence and weigh in with NADCAP to move that post. I've always been a proponent that audit survey should be the very last thing you do, and your audit will not be closed out till you finish that survey. So everybody's got to finish it, but you already know your grade, and you can be honest on the audit, which will then give NADCAP. Any company owner wants great information to help their people improve. They certainly want you to have good information to have quality improvements, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's all MTI is trying to say to NADCAP is you have a flawed system in human behavior, how that happens. How can we better improve that by putting it on the end? So it'll be interesting to see where those comments come out. And I know you're working on a letter that'll then go out to Bob Ferry and Peters and the rest of our committee. Talk about what the letter will do. We're going to get that to NADCAP and address some of these issues.
Yeah. So we just want to make a presentation to the powers that be at PRI and in the NADCAP program about what we think may be a more impactful and honest way to gather data about audit performance and the supplier's perspective of it, that completely removes it from any fear factor associated with their particular accreditation effort.
Right, right. Well, Robert, Bob, and Ed, any final thoughts on NADCAP and what's going on there?
Well, there's a lot of moving wheels. The auditor observation program is now quite strongly embedded in the system. In the past, it was suppliers basically had first right of refusal to have an observer show up at their audit. But now, because the participation was so low, PRI rewrote that procedure to delimit refusals to 4 specific instances, and I don't recall them precisely, but they're in the operating procedure that's available in eAuditNet to review. And that's kind of important. I mean, I understand the need for the primes to be responsible for auditor performance. It is their program, and they need to have firsthand knowledge about how these audits go and how auditors actually perform to the checklist requirements. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out in the future.
Well, isn't there a little bit of fear with that as well? Because it's like having 2 auditors in your place at once.
It can be. One of the benefits of the revised operating procedure was requirement for auditor observers to actually perform to some written criteria for a change, and before it wasn't quite so clear, and now it is. And that there are opportunities for auditor observers to be critiqued and perhaps even kept from sitting in on future audits if they don't perform to the criteria in the operating procedure.
Right.
So to the degree that you can control that, I think they're making an honest effort of doing so.
Okay.
I've been exposed to 2 observational audits. One was not so good, and the other one was like it was written from the spec. The guy was perfect, at least to the degree that you can do that perfectly. So it's a tough one for everybody, really.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Well, I appreciate y'all with everything. Ed, Robert, Bob, thank you for all you do. A couple final thoughts. One, this has been recorded and we posted out in our open forum, which will hit everyone's email tomorrow. I would encourage you to share it with all your team members and have them watch this and stay tuned. Our next edition of Heat Treat Live will be May 28th at 2 p.m. Central Eastern Time. That's Eastern Time. And it's going to have 3 people from our cybersecurity committee on it, telling you the big things you need to worry about in cybersecurity with all this interconnectivity going on today and all your machines, your mobile apps, keeping it hack free. So make sure to tune in and get your IT people and your key management watching this. Just a little encouragement to everybody watching. I know a number of members beam this program up on their wall in their plants and get their 5 or 6 key managers to watch it so they can stay tuned in too. So don't forget, there's an opportunity if you have a projector to do this in your office so that your team can watch it together and discuss what they learned from them each and every time. So, but MTI is here for you members. Thanks for tuning in today for your time for the last 46 minutes. If there's any questions you have on this, you can email me at tom@heattreat.net. And remember, you're not just strong, you're MTI strong, my friends. We're glad to be here for you. Y'all have a great day.
All right. Thanks for everybody.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Bye.